And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Me and Ryan back to recap episode 2 of Survivor season 45. What is up, Ryan?
Dylan, I am doing well. We got to see another episode of 90 Minutes, and I've got to say, very impressed so far with the second episode.
Yeah, I think the 90-minute episodes have been definitely great. A lot of times, I guess, watching 60-minute episodes for all these years, it's like you want more. You always want more, and now like we're getting that more. So it was nice the other night when we hit the mark where the episode probably would have been over and we were only at the immunity challenge. So it definitely, from that standpoint, enjoyable to watch. But I think also from just like a Survivor aspect as well, a very enjoyable episode.
Well, yeah, because and we'll get into it, but basically we understand all the tribe dynamics, even though once again, Lulu being the disaster tribe got most of our focus. We still got a good taste of both the red and the blue tribes, and I could tell you where everybody kind of stands within their group, which is pretty great. And Dylan, I saw this on Rob's fact checker, but for the first time in Survivor history, every single person got a confessional in the episode, which usually episodes 2, 3, 4, like basically until we get to like the final 8, that's when everyone gets something. But like in these pre-merges, you have episodes where like your Heathers, people go like 5 episodes without a confessional, and with the 90 minutes, everybody got some airtime last night, which was great.
Yeah, it is great to hear from everybody because like we're not having those moments where we don't see anybody for multiple episodes and don't know people by episode 5. So it is really nice. It has been very nice. I really enjoyed episode 2 overall. I think it was a lot better than episode 1, and I'm hoping that after the episode 1 backlash that it received, and rightfully so, that a lot of the community is going to come around to the season, hopefully, because I think it has potential. We'll see what ends up happening. But to jump into everything from chronological standpoint, the episode started with a major throwback with the original previously on Survivor and opening credits. Opening credits. I mean, coming back, love to see it. The new era is reverting back.
So I saw this on Twitter like 4 hours before the premiere, and I was not the premiere, before the episode, and I was gonna tell all my friends and be like, "Hey, this is happening." But I'm like, you know what? I think some people don't want to be spoiled on it, so I kind of like held back. But Survivor on Twitter is like, "All right, you've been waiting for it. We're gonna drop the intro like 4 hours early, so you can kind of see it beforehand." And the internet was losing their minds. All the comments were like, "Never let this go away again. You guys got to keep this. This is like nostalgia overload. I love this so." Clearly that they recognize that the fans love to see it back after like so many years, so they need to keep with it.
Yeah, what was the last season that they stopped doing it?
Someone asked me that recently. I want to say, God, it's been at least like 14 seasons. Like, I remember like with Cagayan, with Worlds Apart, like 14, 15 seasons ago, I remember seeing it consistently, but like in the 30s and 40s, we never got to see it ever. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, it is great that they gave this back to us, and hopefully as the season goes on, a lot of other old school type things being thrown back in.
Yeah.
Very very happy that Survivor came around to that and finally said, you know what, this is what the fans have been craving for the last 4 seasons. We're gonna sprinkle some stuff back in there. So that was nice to see. So the episode starts off with, well, actually, you know what? Let's start with the vote first, and then we'll go back to Lulu at the beginning because I guess it's all circle. Lulu at the beginning, Lulu at the end. But look, Brandon ends up going home, and all I could say is there were people throwing out some very low things in terms of contestant ranking, I'll say, of all time. But look, Brandon was entertaining this episode. What can I say? Sometimes when players are just so failing so hard at the game, it makes for good TV. And this is exactly what happened. It was like, after last episode, I said on this podcast, I said, I could see a scenario where Brandon gets the redemption arc where he ends up being an Aubrey or David Wright, finding his footing and going far. This was unfortunately a scenario where he just could not find his footing, whatever he did. The fact that he finds the beware advantage, gives away the beware advantage so that he could keep his vote, and then ends up losing his vote because he risks it in another way on the island that he had to go to. and then, loses his vote that way, can't win the challenge. Then he doesn't have a vote anyway. I mean, just a hilarious comedy of errors. I saw, people throwing around the term like just the sequence of events that happened with Brandon where you couldn't even write it.
No.
I mean, and then on the way to eventually losing his vote in that challenge, he falls on the walk. Like you cannot make up how bad things were going for, out there. And eventually, once he blew the immunity challenge in the puzzle, there was no coming back from it. I think we all knew that.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I got to give Brandon some credit because I've seen him obviously with the post game interviews and the social media. Like he's obviously taking it like a champ. He's not like getting all defensive and like you guys didn't see this, and this. Like he's really being like, look, I'm a super fan. This is my dream. Didn't end up going well. Kind of sucked in all the challenges, but I was so happy to have the experience. So I'm happy that he's at least taking it with stride. But no, he did not have a good episode. 2-episode stretch still on with the challenges. I mean, like you said, people were kind of saying, is he like, one of the worst performers? I still feel like I got to give it to J'Tia for everything J'Tia did. I mean, Brandon at least never took one of the balls and threw the ball off the course. Like at least he never did that. But no, Brandon, like, look, he said it too. It's like if he deemed himself the puzzle guy and you had 2 challenges in a row where you just couldn't perform at the puzzle and you're not contributing physically, at that point, like what really can you contribute to the tribe in that case? So this was a tried true example, Dylan, of tribal council, where it's like, do we keep strength over loyalty? Where we keep Emily, who could be a bit flaky, but she can maybe help us more in the challenges, and Brandon, who is maybe a net negative in challenges, but he at least will stay loyal to us. Sabiyah really likes him. And I think in the end, they went with the strength. And I think in the new era, that's what most people are going to default to, is going with strength. But I mean, I don't think it was an easy decision. I feel like they really wanted to keep Brandon for his loyalty. But I mean, Caleb was the one who kind of pulled Emily in, got her to change her social game around. And now, hopefully, for the 3-person alliance of Sean, Sabiyah, and Caleb, Emily can be that asset, hopefully.
Yeah, and voting out the weakest performer, how's that for another old school type thinking there? But
not only old school, Dylan, I feel like kind of the season's been like, I feel like the season, we had a good episode, but we haven't really like broken out yet because the first episode was a quits. This episode, like Jeff said, in Modern Survivor, you rarely get, is it A or is it B, which it was Emily or Brandon. You usually tribal council, it's like there's 3-4 people heading into the vote that it could be. It was a very binary choice. So we haven't even got to a blind side yet. We haven't even got to like a 6-3 split or whatever. So we still have a lot of game left to go, and we have had nothing like crazy yet, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think like speaking, and I guess this will bring us back sort of to the beginning of this episode, so it'll segue perfect. Speaking of the other choice here, who ends up being safe, Emily, what a redemption episode for her. Yeah. Definitely, especially after that first episode where, I mean, she came on strong. That's all I could say. She came on strong. A lot of people were not fans of her in the game and just watching on TV. And now she has this episode where, she kind of finds her footing, and Caleb says, you got to keep your enemies close at the end of the day. And he decides to, at least act like, as he said, that he was going to be, close to Emily and bring her in a little bit tighter because I guess, in case they need numbers that in the future, or, to make sure that she feels safe at least. It was a great idea by Caleb, and I think it's a sign of being a very like good player. Brings her close, ends up, getting on the same page with her. Brandon gets voted out here. And now in the scenario where there is a swap, or in a scenario where, let's say, Lulu somehow ends up actually winning challenges, and, they do go to a merge with 3-4 people and Emily is still there potentially, then, she does have them. And I feel like that, at least at minimum, if she, maybe doesn't want to align with them come a merge or come another kind of swap, whatever. If she does not want to align with, like, let's say Sabiyah and Sean or whoever's left in the Lulu tribe, she's probably going to tell that to Caleb, right? So, like, in a scenario where, let's just say in a weird scenario where 3 or 4 of them make the merge, Emily's still there, right? And, Sabiyah's worried and saying, I feel like Emily's going to flip. Caleb's going to be able to get that information from Emily. She's probably going to throw an idea out there like, hey, what if we go to the other side, us two? And he'll be able to come back if Caleb is truly loyal to Sabiyah, which I would assume he is, that all indications would assume that they're a very tight duo. He could run that information back to Sabiyah and they could take care of that immediately. So I really like the idea by Caleb to kind of get close to Emily when nobody wanted to. It was a very good opportunity to, kind of be her number one, even if she's not his number one. So he get valuable information. So I thought not only was that a great, gameplay move by Caleb, but it was kind of cool also to see like Emily's redemption arc in that sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, Caleb, I thought did a great job. I keep wanting to say last night, but he did a great job on Wednesday. He did the classic Rob Cesternino thing where you see someone on the outs and you pull the outsiders in for numbers. I think it's a really great thing to utilize here, especially in a small tribe. I mean, because if Lulu loses again, which their odds on favor to lose again, I think the 3-person alliance will stay strong and vote her out. But you never know if Sean or Sabiyah tries to get cute and make a move. Now Caleb is the one guy on that tribe that has Emily kind of in his pockets if something goes wrong, which is really good in the short term. And then in the long term, at the merge, hopefully Emily will stick with you as a number. And you're right. Emily had a great redemption arc, really, really kind of reintegrated herself within the tribe after coming off being very defensive and upset after tribal council. And we can get into it now or we can get into it later. But I also thought what she did with the shot in the dark was so interesting because my first reaction to it was like kind of shock and like, why would you do that? But then thinking about it and hearing other podcasts, I'm like, oh my God, it's actually pretty smart to do that. So I feel like Emily really did a pretty good job kind of reacclimating with the group.
Yeah, I think with the shot in the dark, like that was, I was honestly not a fan of it when I first saw it. I was like, that's a crazy thing to do. Like, I don't think they're gonna care about that. But like, it seems like they actually did care about it. And it was like the one thing that she had, the one thing that could potentially save her in a Hail Mary in the case that they did choose to keep Brandon. The one thing that could save her, she was basically giving up and she was saying, you know what, like I'm at this point, I have nothing else. I'm willing to work with you guys. I realized I made a mistake and I realized I needed to change. And here's my shot in the dark to show that. And I do actually think that it did help. I don't think that like it was the sole reason why they kept her, but I thought it was definitely a savvy move that I did not think anyone would do or definitely haven't seen before in the last few seasons. So yeah. I did think that was interesting.
Because you know what it is too? It's like, because I saw people debating this, like, why would you give that up? Like Sabiyah can do what like Sarah did to Sierra. Like you can just take someone's advantage and vote them out. Why would she do that? But I guess people were pointing out, like, you go from a 1 in 6 shots of the shot in the dark, where it's like, we've seen it played now 7-8 times. It's only worked obviously once. So your odds aren't that great. So you go from a 1 in 6 chance, which is 16%, to I'm going to give you this as a sign of trust. And I really increased my odds of you wanting to work with me because I showed you a lot of trust there. And I think in the new era, people share a lot of information and a lot of advantages just because that's how they play nowadays. So I think, even though I can't assign a number to it, I would argue she went from a 16% chance with a shot in the dark to like at least doubling or tripling her chances and staying by doing that with Sabiyah and showing that trust, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a great move. And yeah, let's get a little bit into the Lulu tribe dynamics early on, or I shouldn't say tribe dynamics. I'm going to say idol search. But it was crazy, right? It was like they didn't trust her so much to the point where, Emily's searching for an idol. They send her out in pairs. I thought that interaction with like I believe it was Sabiyah gets paired with her, right? And she was like, "Hey, we're searching for everyone's gonna search for idol in pairs." And then she was like, "No, I want to search for it alone." And Sabiyah was like, "Well, what do I do? I'm just kind of like follow you." like that was a great dynamic. And obviously Brandon ends up being the one to find it. And gives it to Sabiyah. So I just want to know, like, without knowing the final outcome and without knowing what happens to Brandon going on the journey and getting his vote taken away anyway, what were your thoughts on Brandon's idea to not open the Beware advantage?
I think it was fine. I mean, I feel like how many times have we seen people in the last few seasons open it and then get themselves in a very rough situation where they lose their vote, they can't vote the next tribal, and then it either puts them and their ally in a bad spot. There was the time in 42 where they publicly had to reveal like who didn't have their vote, and it really caused problems, like for Chanel. So I mean, look, obviously I want to have the idol and I want to take that chance to get my vote back and keep an idol as well. But I don't hate it. If Brandon really was aligned with Sabiyah and felt like he could really build that trust with her, because in his mind, he was like, I don't have the idol, but I know where it is. And that not only gives me that connection with her, it also gives me kind of a little bit of leverage over her as well. So I don't mind him in the moment, because it wasn't like he found it and then ran and told her. They found it basically in the same spot together. So he was like, let me give it to her, have her open it up. She can lose her votes. Now, I didn't anticipate that he would actually go on the journey and risk his vote too, but we'll get there. But no, at least he knew where the idol was, so to say, and he at least had that bit of information. So honestly, I mean, it's the first time we've seen somebody forcefully like not open it and then give it to somebody else. So I didn't mind it that much, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in hindsight, it was the wrong move, but like in real time, not knowing he was going to go on the journey and lose his vote, not knowing he's going to end up being like voted out, like I thought it was interesting, and I thought it was something that maybe a lot of players in the past should have probably considered, whereas they didn't. And like you said, one of the most important things is not only if you're not going to have the idol, you got to know where it is, right? So him knowing that Sabiyah had it, I think would have helped him had he stayed in theoretically, or had they, won the challenge. So I didn't mind it for sure. I thought, it was a conservative play, but it was one that was not necessarily a bad conservative play.
Yeah.
All right, let's head to the Blue Tribe and talk about that, Bella, where we have a very interesting dynamic. You got Bruce, who is, acting goofy around camp, the fun uncle, and Katurah seems to see right through it. And like he's doing this to lower his the great sequence was where he was like, I'm doing this all to lower my threat level. And then Katurah's like, how can nobody see he's doing this to lower his threat level? Thought that was great. Now you have Jake and Bruce, the guys on one side, and then you have Kendra and Katurah on the other side. And then you have the middle, which is Kelly and Brando, who, are in the swing position ultimately. So if that tribe does get in trouble, they are going to be the ones deciding who goes home. I kind of, especially after the Women's Alliance happened last week, I kind of saw this to be where it was headed. Especially with Brando. Brando seems like the guy that we didn't hear much from. We didn't hear him talking about allegiance too much to Jake and too much to Bruce, and we didn't hear him talking, allegiance to the other side either. So I kind of expected him to be the one in the middle. And it seems like Kelly is also playing that role really well in terms of the girls all think she's with them. And that might not necessarily be the case. I like that she's keeping her options open. I kind of want to see this tribe go to tribal council because it is a very interesting dynamic.
I mean, look, we've only seen one tribe go to tribal, so any other option would be kind of interesting to see. But no, I think I'm trying to think like if I'm Kelly, what's the right move here? Because I see your point where it's like if the girls are locked in and the girls aren't flipping, that's a solid 3 to move with, and you're gonna have to force one of the guys to come with you, like Brando. But she is right, where again, in a 3-tribe format, you kind of want to keep your numbers. So she may, for strength reasons, have to go with Bruce and Brando and Jake, and maybe get rid of somebody like Kendra, for example. I feel like if I had to guess right now, I feel like if they go to tribal, I feel like she's going to go with the guys. I think she'll cut one of the girls loose just because they can't risk going into the merge with less numbers. So I feel like that's what Kelly will do. I'll be interested to see if Brando agrees with her, or if actually it's an opposite where Brando's like, I kind of want to go with the girls. Because that'd be interesting where you think they're going to swing in the same way. But imagine if Kelly's like, I think we should go with the guys. And Brando goes, oh, actually, I think we should go with the girls instead. Like that'd be a kind of fun little dynamic there. And your other point about Bruce and Katurah, that was just so funny with Katurah getting so annoyed with Bruce. I think I said this to you last night. I was like, imagine a world where Bruce doesn't get medevaced and you have Bruce act like how goofy he is. Bruce, Carolyn, Jam, and Carson all in the same tribe. Like that is wild to me.
It would have been insane. Like I think he would have there's no way he wasn't going out early in that season.
Oh no, he was screwed.
Yeah, there's no way. So good thing he got another chance, I guess.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting that you bring up the Brando thing and what his decision would be. I think the right decision would be for him to go with the guys. We'll
Mhm.
see what he would decide. But to me, if you're Brando, and you're kind of like the brains behind everything, then you got to keep Bruce and Jake with you as like almost a shield. That would be my move, but we'll see what happens. I think he's doing a really good job of like, kind of making good relationships with everybody on the tribe, and we saw that. So it'll be interesting to see. That's, pretty much all we got of Bella like the entire episode, because they won the immunity challenge, and then at the journey, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, Bruce just decided to protect his vote. So it's like we didn't get too much from them other than that, in terms of like that we got a lot from them in that moment, but in terms of like other parts of the episode, we didn't hear that much from them. But let's move to the Reba, the Red Tribe, where we have Austin, who is finding first we have Jay Maya, who is like, observing the tribe flag, trying to see what it could be. Everyone kind of realizes that this puzzle could eventually lead to something. And then you have Austin, who actually has the advantage, is trying to figure out the code, still needs to find it. I think it's very interesting this season, and this is something that I'm not sure if we brought up last podcast. The Red Tribe has that code on their flag, but it's different for them than it is for the other tribes, right? So it's not something like where they could just, meet up at a journey or meet up at another challenge and be like, hey, this is what it is. And like that was in the past when we had been saying that, how they were like figuring out that all the tribes had the same things as them. Like, I like how it's different. Like, Sabaya, theirs was like very specific to their camp with a specific tree. And like now it's like in the wax, the idol, which we'll talk about that. But it's very different on their tribe than it is for Reba. So good on Survivor for mixing it up so that the tribes can't like tell each other what the correct way to solve it is. I'm really, I think that's a great addition.
I'm really curious if that's. Yeah, I'm curious, Dylan, if that was production's idea or if that was due to fan feedback. Because obviously, the phrases got poor reviews. People liked the bracelets in 43, the beads, I should say, and then in 44, the cage got like pretty good reception. But I think the one thing I saw online was people being like I'll use Carla as an example. Oh, seeing the beads is cool. Getting to see Carla work through the beads. Then the next episode, we see someone else do the beads. Now the next episode, like, it got kind of repetitive. So I'm wondering if this time Survivor was like, we're going to keep Beware, but let's make it like more like a classic Survivor idol hunts. But instead of everybody having the same like clue on the flag, let's do a different type of scavenger hunt on each tribe so it feels unique. And like you just said, people aren't going to be comparing notes because it's different at each of their camps. So I think I'm really curious if the fans kind of helped lead to this or if it was all production, but I kind of like that it wasn't the same type of like scavenger hunt on each tribe, basically.
Yeah, you have to imagine that it's a lot of fan feedback as well from that, because it was a big topic of conversation. But speaking of that, let's get into like the dynamic in this Red Tribe, and then we could kind of weave in journey talk there, because it like ties in, because we go right back to Red after because of what happens with Drew. So you got a strong 4 alliance, it looks like, on this tribe, where we have Drew, Julie, who have like a mother-son type relationship going on. Then you have Austin and Dee. That's your strong 4, leaving Jay Maya and Sifu on the outside. I think after what happened with Sifu last episode, this is not surprising. Yeah. And then, you got the journey where, and it ends up being, and we already spoke a lot about it, Bruce protects his vote, Brandon fails miserably, and Drew ends up completing it, getting a safety without power advantage. How about that for coming back? Has it been in the new era yet or no?
I was talking to your brother about this, and I was saying how I want to say that the only time we saw it play was with Jeremy, but I could have sworn, and I'm going to fact check this right now. I could have sworn that it was like an option on like some type of advantage menu, and we never saw it get played. I can't remember if that was in the new era or if that was like in 39 or whatever, but I could have sworn we saw it like at another point, just it never got played. But I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like you're right about that. I feel like I've heard it since the Jeremy thing, but Jeremy was definitely the only time we saw it played. So let me know if you get that fact checked. But thought that was interesting that was that was the advantage. So that could be played up to final 10. Drew could leave tribal council any point up to final 10 if he wants, and he would be safe. Now why I wanted to weave in journey talk here with the red tribe, not only that Drew got it, is that he gets back to camp and tells everybody that he has a safety without power. So, what were your thoughts on Drew getting back to camp and completely telling the truth, not hiding anything, literally showing them the advantage that he has?
Honestly, I think it was fine because safety without power, by definition, is one of the weakest advantages in Survivor history, which again, that's why I like it. I hate when things are overpowered because it's in the name. It's safety without power. It literally just lets you basically kind of like they had kind of like an eject button where it's like, you just get out of danger at tribal council, but it doesn't hurt anybody else. There's no idols. So I feel like for Drew to bring that back is actually kind of smart because he is honest with the tribe. And I think honestly in the new era with the people are just going to assume that you have something. So for him to show them what I have, here's like the parchment to prove this is what I have. I'm not bluffing. I'm not lying to you. Because what did we see last episode, Dylan? That's when Emily was still in her negative era, shall we say? Like Caleb and Sabaya failed the Savior Sweat, and they fail it, and she's like, oh, I assume they have an advantage because they didn't come back with anything. So for Drew to come back and be honest and be like, this is what I have, a safety without power. I want it to be used for our tribe in case we need it at the merge. I think it's really smart. He not only gets in good with Jay Maya and Sifu to kind of build that relationship up, but obviously he now further strengthens his core alliance of 4 with Drew, with Julie, Austin, and D. So I feel like it was actually a good move because if it was like an actual idol, Dylan, or like an actual, what was the freaking thing with Sarah last season that was really broken? It was like the the vacuum or like like the one where you can just like steal an advantage or whatever it was. The inheritance advantage, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Like if it was something that was really broken like that, then I would think it would be dumb for him to reveal it. But if it's just literally safety without power, I don't see any downside to him revealing it, honestly.
Yeah, I think at first I was a little bit anti him telling the truth, but now I think you kind of sold me on it. It's completely dependent on the advantage, which leads me to my next point. Austin tells Drew that he has the beware advantage, and I believe this happened after Drew. Did this happen before? It happened after Drew got back, right? Yeah. So, in a sense, Drew gets that information. Probably, Drew revealing that information to the tribe, I would say probably played a big role in Austin telling Drew about his advantage. So I guess it paid off for Drew in that sense so far. What were your thoughts on Austin telling Drew? Because to me, this one is not something I would have done. I mean, you have a beware advantage. Nobody else could figure out that puzzle on the flag without what you have. This is literally all yours to figure out and get the idol before anyone else. I would not have done that personally.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is an old school mentality. I feel like I'm always of the opinion that if it's an idol, just you don't reveal it to anybody, just keep it to yourself. I mean, Jay brings up in the chat that they mentioned JT and Steven, and if they can stay loyal to each other, then I think it's fine. Because then in that case, this bonds them together and they can make that duo to go far in the game. My fear is that Drew, just based on how he looks and based on, him being a super fan, he's going to be a very self-interested player. And to me, if he knows Austin has an idol, Austin's going to find the idol eventually with the clue now, it wouldn't surprise me at some point if he turns to D and to Julie and be like, hey, Austin's kind of the whole package. He's a big threat. Maybe we should take him out at some point. So again, like I think you brought up a good point, Dylan. With these different advantages, with telling people, I think it is always very situationally dependent. It's always very context driven. And I think in this context, Austin telling Drew, yeah, it's going to further their trust. But I feel like if it was reversed and Drew told Austin, I think Austin, someone to me that would be like more like, we're going to ride or die. I like this. Whereas I feel like Drew is kind of more self-interested, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I have a feeling that, look, to me, Drew's arc so far screams to me as like somebody who is like playing too hard too early. In the sense that like I could see him being a big enough threat that he gets taken out at like final 8, final 7, final 9, like around there. And that's where I worry for him. In terms of Austin, I worry that he was so quick to tell somebody like Drew that I think is playing too hard too early. Like it's a scary thing, right? Because you have somebody who's playing that hard that early. Like, are they going to ride with you all the way, or are they going to be the person that is playing too hard too early and be like, wow, this move would be epic if I did this, So it is going to be interesting to see if that quote unquote JT and Steven comparison ends up playing out, or if it ends up falling very short. So we'll see what happens there.
And I have one last thing about the journey before we move on to the immunity challenge and the end of the episode. I gotta say, Brandon, I just don't understand the logic, and he's explained it, but I don't understand the logic in you choosing to not open the Beware advantage because you don't want to risk your vote. To 10 minutes later in the episode, you go to the journey, which is fine to go on the journey, but then you risk your vote and you lose your vote anyway. I feel like the math wasn't mathing for me. And I think the problem is that he said when he saw that challenge, by the way, which I think that's the first time we've seen that since Gabon, or we haven't seen that in a while, but basically where you were matching the tiles and then using the non-matching tiles to solve a combination lock puzzle. In his mind, he was like, oh, if it's just matching, I can easily do that and I can get the advantage, so I don't mind risking my vote. The problem is he doesn't do well under pressure, and he had 3 minutes, and 3 minutes goes pretty fast, and he obviously didn't get it, whereas Drew did. So I guess I could see his thinking where he's like, I can easily do this, but I just don't understand him saying, I don't want to lose my vote when I'm already in a bad spot, to now, yeah, I'll risk my vote. Why not?
All-time bad challenge performer for sure. I mean, I mean, like you said, pretty easy challenge to not to complete in 3 minutes, but the fact that he couldn't match the right pairs. I mean, come on, it's and then heading to the immunity challenge where, I mean, I believe they had a decent lead over the blue tribe, right?
I think they may have got to the puzzle second, so they weren't in last. So yeah, they kind of
they were like right in the mix, and they had like 5 pieces into the puzzle when everybody else completed. I was like, how is this even possible? Like literally, like first of all, and I'll bring this up, new puzzle, but I mean, even if it's a new puzzle that you haven't seen before, it's basically a jigsaw puzzle. Like like put the pieces in place, like how hard could that be? And Sabaya was like trying to do it, and like at the same time, like Brandon seemed to be like holding her back, and like she was like yelling at him, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, and like you said, you can't advertise yourself as the puzzle guy and then not manage to not even come close, not even get like 10 pieces in, of a puzzle like that. And like I said, new I love how they, Carson breaks the challenges and now they introduce new puzzles. So funny.
I mean, yeah, it got to the point last season, Dylan, where we're watching the show and we're like, okay, whether it's in the tribe portion or whether it's in the individual portion of the game, is there a puzzle? All right, whatever team Carson's on, that team's winning because there's a puzzle. Like that. That's just how it became, because he had all the puzzles memorized and he had all the puzzles 3D printed. So I think production, and again, that was just on the show. Then they had to get back to the US and hear the fans be like, it's all rigged. You don't know 3D print the puzzle. So they had to change up the puzzles. I'm glad we saw this brand new puzzle. It kind of looked like a, not coral. It looked like, I guess, a seaweed type of like coral puzzle. But no, that was really cool to see. And the other thing, by the way, with the challenge that we now learned, also due to 44, and we can thank Claire for this, there are finally, in the first time in the show, new sit out rules, because usually it's based on episodes. So once you have an immunity challenge, tribal council, the episode resets. Now someone else can sit out. But now Jeff has said from now on, whether it's reward, immunity, you can never sit out back to back ever. So I think this is a great change. I think this is going to allow us to see, like, okay, I can't remember who sat out for the Red Tribe, but like Sifu, or like you sat out. Now we get to see you play in the next one. So I think this is a good change.
Yeah. Thank goodness that this change was made, because I mean, there were a lot of people like we're seeing in the comments, the quote unquote the Claire effect. Like, we were seeing a lot of people take advantage of sitting out, and it's not what you don't go on Survivor to sit out. It's as simple as that. So I think mixing it up and making sure that the tribes that are strong enough to already like win challenges to the point where they have people sitting out should not be able to keep sitting their weakest players out. You know what I mean? So I think it is a good change.
And you know what it is too, Dylan? It's like obviously we can point to that this really happened because of Claire last season, obviously, because Claire sat out 3 in a row and then she gets voted out and everyone's like, oh, Claire never had a chance. It's like, well, she never played in any challenges. But Dylan, this has been happening in the show's history. Like, I remember, Heroes versus Villains, Sandra and Courtney sat out of every challenge. And the one moment, Dylan, that I'll never forget is I remember watching Survivor Philippines, and it was like episode 5 or 6. And then Jeff's like, all right, who's going to sit out for Tanzang? And of course, Abby Maria raises her hand. And this must have been like their 6th, or if you factor in reward challenges, must have been like the season's like 6th or 7th challenge. And Jeff was like, Abby, out of all the challenges we've competed in, how many have you played? She's like, 2. So it's like, this has been happening for 45 seasons now. I'm happy they finally changed the rule.
Yeah. It was long overdue. So yeah, season 44 could say, the 44 cast could say they had a big effect on Survivor rules. So
next time we have Game Changers 2, put Carson and Claire on Game Changers.
All right. So Lulu loses the challenge, like we spoke about before. It was either down to Brandon or Emily. And then it was funny because they wanted to make sure that Sabaya had her vote, and they don't have their flint. And it turns out that you need the flint to get the fire, to eventually get the flame that melts the candle to get the idol, which is in the candle. So this was definitely a pretty funny twist that just so happened to happen to the tribe that could not win a single challenge. Look, this tribe is truly special to the point of this is unprecedented levels of just incompetence all around and just disaster. So maybe they'll find their footing after now getting out Brandon. But wow, everything that could go wrong will go wrong for this tribe.
What can go wrong will go wrong. No, to me, this was if anyone's ever seen Curb, this was very Curb Your Enthusiasm to me, where they spend the whole episode looking for the idol. They finally get the idol, and it's encased in wax, and they can't burn it because they don't have a fire. And they can't make a fire because they don't have a flint. So it was very Curb to me. So funny. Love seeing that happen. People actually asked online. They said, was Sabaya, and she would not have done this because it would have revealed it to Emily, but they were like, could Sabaya brought it to Tribal Council and like threw it in the fire? Tribal Council like placed it like in front of the fire. And I guess production or one of the contestants was like, no, the production said you must burn this like at your camp. She couldn't bring it to Tribal. So.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's no way that would be allowed. I think the point is that they want you to have your flint or make fire camp. So, I mean, the disaster continues for Lulu until they finally win a challenge or get their flint. So,
I mean, do we think they're gonna win? Because here's the thing. I was like, oh well, if they're physically weaker, they can maybe win a puzzle, but they can't do puzzles either. Maybe now that Brandon's gone, maybe Emily will step up and do it with like Sabaya possibly. But Dylan, I mean, could we really see another situation with like Shannon Ricard? Do we really feel like this tribe is going to get whittled down to like 1 or 2 people?
I think they win next episode. I think they win next episode. At the end of the day, Survivor challenges, like if you replace Emily with Brandon, if you replace Brandon with Emily in that challenge, outcome could have been different, So I think, like I said, in the physical portion, even with in the physical portion, they were right there. And then the puzzle happens and Brandon couldn't do the puzzle. I do think it'll make a big difference. And I'm going to say that the Survivor gods are on their side for this one. I'm going to say they win, and I'm going to predict that either red or blue is going to Tribal Council next week, which will certainly be interesting since we have not seen that yet.
If I had to, if I'm going to go with your line of thinking and guess who's going to lose, I feel like maybe blue will lose. I don't know. I feel like red and blue seem kind of even to me, like in terms of strength, but maybe I'll guess blue loses. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We've been kind of set up with the where the lines are drawn on both tribes, so I don't get a certain sense either way. Anything else we need to discuss with this episode before we hit questions?
Before we get to questions, we talked about Emily with the shot in the dark already. I think we covered everything. The last thing I'll say, just to do a quick advantage tally, since we need to do that in the new era because there's just so many things. Not that bad so far. Drew has safety without power. Sabaya has the Beware Idol, but it's stuck in wax, so she technically doesn't have it, but she has it. And then Austin deciphered the clue to the idol, but he hasn't found it yet. So that's kind of where we sit from an advantage standpoint.
Yep, we did not see Austin find it in this episode.
I guarantee you we see it next week.
Yeah, I would think that happens next week. But let's hit some questions before we head out here. Let's see what we got. So, okay. So actually, we have a statement here. So this is a prediction from somebody. Says that they think that Jay thinks that Emily is getting a finale growth edit where she does not win but makes the finale. I think that's an interesting theory, and I could see her going far. I think ultimately, I think even though we saw her growth, I think that her growth is for the short term. I think, unfortunately for her, I could see her being either. I just don't see her going that far in this game. I could see her being like either like an all-time pre-merge character or like goes very early into the merge if she does happen to get there. I just can't see that many people dealing with her for that long.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think after Gabler, I may be retired from trying to read the edits. I can't do it anymore. It's so hard to predict. Look, I mean, I think you're right though. I think Emily, I could see her still getting clipped because of just some of the missteps she's had, or like Jay saying, she could make it far. I think there's still a lot of variance there, but I will say good on her for having that redemption this episode.
All right, question here. Maybe safety without power is only good until final 10 because they're going to keep the final 10 and final 9 like they did in 44. Because I don't think they'd want a split tribal of 4 people because somebody used safety without power and left. Okay, so I think the question is asking, do we think that there's going to be a split tribal at 10, and that's why the safety without power could only be used up until 10 because they don't want Drew leaving and then it being a 4-person vote. I don't know if that's the reason why. I think it's a decent theory, but I also think that they may have just chose a number. Like I don't know.
I'll look it up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the reasoning is. I think they said in the episode, like Jay saying, they said explicitly you could only use this until final 10. Maybe because I think with Jeremy used it at like the final. See, Winners at War is tough because of Edge of Extinction. I think Jeremy used it at like 9 or 10. So yeah. I'm trying to remember if that's just how it works because that's when Jeremy used it, or I'm wondering if it was like Jay saying, we're going to do a split tribal. So to make the numbers work, you got to do it before 10. So I don't know what the reasoning is, but that'd be interesting if they played it like that.
Yep. All right. Next question. Given that the first 3 winners of the new era were pretty under the radar, could it be the case that the meta now shifts and people look at under the radar players like Kelly as threats come merge? I still think that the nature of Survivor, it's like, let's just say if Austin is really good at challenges, individual challenges, I'm just throwing his name out because, he seems like a pretty fit guy. Yeah. I feel like somebody like that is still going to be the overwhelming like target because people just are afraid of that. It's like at the end of the day, if you're out there on the islands, the only way for you to be safe is to win a challenge. You're a self-interested player. You want to put yourself in the best position to win that challenge. I feel like that always is going to end up like prevailing and being like the main threats. But I think that, I personally don't really see Kelly as like in the same, how do I describe this? In the same like category as like the first three winners of the new era. Um, I see her more. I don't really know how I see her yet, but I think that, yeah, I still think it's going to be like it normally is, but I think that Kelly could be a big threat, not because she's under the radar, but because she's a strategic threat. If that makes sense, like openly a strategic threat.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's tough with Kelly because again, we really haven't seen her. I mean, other than this episode where she was shown to be in the middle with Brando between the Women's Alliance and Jake and Bruce. I mean, we haven't seen her really do anything yet, just because Blue Tribe hasn't lost. So I do think that Kelly, like you said, has great potential. I know we both loved her in the preseason, and again, I can't really compare her to Erica, Marianne, or Gabler yet, like Jay's asking, but we'll see. I mean, I think what's interesting to me though, Dylan, is that we haven't seen anybody say yet in confessionals, I want to target under the radar players because of who's won recently, like Erica, Marianne. Now, granted, we only see 90 minutes, so there's a chance that left on the cutting room floor in confessionals, there's a chance that production saying, "Oh, who are you maybe looking at as a threat?" And they're saying, "Well, I want to target low-key players in this new era of the game," but they're just not showing it to us. But no, we haven't seen anybody yet say, I want to change up my target list based on how the game has been changing, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that is certainly an interesting question. All right, so that wraps it up for this week. Certainly looking forward to this Wednesday's episode. Very excited for another 90-minute episode. How about that? 90 minutes every week. Love to see it. And yeah, looking forward to next week's podcast.
Looking forward to it. Dylan, I gotta say, I know we and I know we changed it up because of your work schedule. I used to love, I do love doing it after the episode or on Thursday nights, but I have to say, doing it on these Sunday mornings kind of helps them a little bit because it kind of breaks up the week for me, where instead of waiting like a whole week for Survivor again, I kind of have to watch it. I wait kind of 3 days. I talk to you about it. I get hyped again, and then I have to wait 3 more days. So it kind of like breaks up that week for me instead of waiting 7 whole, because I watch the episode, I wait 7 whole days to really like watch it again. Whereas like now it's like I kind of get like a little like hype in the middle. So yeah, it's been nice.
It has been nice for sure. I agree with that for sure. So and it's like, you have like a few days to like digest what happened, kind of like think about it a little more. So it's interesting. But yeah. We'll be back probably next Sunday. Definitely expect us around then. And until then, grab your torches, melt your wax, and head back to camp. Good night.